Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Conspiracy Farm, where we don't start the conspiracies, we just add the water. And now, your host of the most state-of-the-art, most informed podcast on the interweb, I present to you Pat Miletich and Jeffrey Wilson. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for war?
All right, we're ready to roll with another installment of the Conspiracy Farm, where we don't start the conspiracies, we just add the water. And today we've got a very special guest on. But before that, I want to make sure that everybody knows during our introduction that amazing voice that you hear is none other than Mike Kendall, who is the ring announcer and voice of the Legacy Fighting Alliance on Access TV Fights. You can watch us and him pretty much every Friday night throughout the year. So thank you again to Mike Kendall for giving us that great introduction for the Conspiracy Farm. And also joining us, my co-host, Jeffrey Wilson, who's got an amazing voice himself, a very, very intelligent man. And Jeff, you kind of had to be pried out of bed by me today because you're feeling a little under the weather. You're going to be able to get through this episode since we've got an amazing guest?
Well, I think so, man. You know, not too long ago, this young lady, she's like, hey, I want to have some unprotected sex, but I'm like, shit. Well, might as well. When's the next time I'll be in Haiti, right? So I'm suffering the consequences of it now. No, but I got myself a little bug, but we're fighting through it.
All right, good. And, there's, as Mike Kendall says, are you ready for war in the introduction to this show? There's a lot of wars going on around the country and around the world for this country's sovereignty, for its safety of its citizens. And our guest that's on today is certainly a big part of that war that's going on, and the war that's going on the southern border with all the chaos down there, the violence, the drugs, the people that are being brought across. I've worked with Maricopa County Sheriff's deputies down there, done some training down there for those guys, and years ago, and they were explaining how bad it was. And this guy's on the front lines, Tim Foley. He's 58 years old and spent most of his life in construction. He was part of the 82nd Airborne in the late 70s and founded the Arizona Border Recon in 2010. He founded it basically because he heard two major lies by our government, that these people coming across the border were going to do the jobs that Americans don't want to do, which I don't agree with at all, because I did every manual job known to man, and also that the border is safe and secure, which is a complete crock. There's about 200 volunteers in it, and is growing right now with Arizona Border Recon. This guy is doing a great job down there. Tim Foley, really appreciate having you on the show, and I'm looking forward to diving into this and finding out how things really are down there.
Well, thanks for having me and wanting to know what's really going on.
Yeah. So, give us kind of I was looking at the intelligence on ArizonaBorderRecon.org, your website, and it's pretty impressive. You guys have really got things mapped out well down there with all the different types of incidences, even ultralight airplanes that are being used to bring drugs across, that are being either intercepted or turned around at the border. Violent incidences, dead bodies being found, people hauling bodies across in terms of the coyotes, and then also the drug movements are all mapped out on this thing, and there's a lot of them. I mean, it's a massive map of the border area along Arizona there, and you guys have it really well mapped out.
Yeah, that's a couple years old because it took so much time to put that all together in a database and keep filing it day in and day out and day in and day out. I would need somebody or two people full time just to keep doing that.
Wow.
So basically we've backed off of that. But I mean, it's continuing. And so what we've done instead is we've got a YouTube channel, and we post videos of what we see coming across.
And is that YouTube channel also Arizona Border Recon?
Yes, sir.
Border Recon, yeah. So people can go to that YouTube site. So tell us, what on an average day, what are you guys seeing, and how many miles are you guys covering?
We're attempting to cover about 400 square miles down here.
Jeez.
There's about 100 lineal miles where it's just a 4-strand barbed wire fence, and that's where there is a fence, and that's where we try to patrol, and we get as close to the line as possible because basically you have to look at it as a reverse funnel where it's coming in through the narrow end, and the further away you get from the border, it opens up. Mm-hmm. And so it gets harder and harder to track and catch the farther away from the border you are, because the trails just keep splitting every half mile to a mile. Right. So when you have 6 trails on the border, 5 miles in, you're looking at about 200.
Yes. So you guys are concentrated, as you said, on the smallest part of the funnel, which is the most intense and probably the most dangerous.
Yeah. We were out, I had guys out a couple of weeks ago, and we sat down on the line on hills overlooking Mexico, and we could see some of their most favorite trails, and 4 nights in a row, we just heard, 2, 3, 4 hour running gun battles on the other side. They're battling it out for the most lucrative routes on this side.
Yeah. And now which groups are mainly down there battling? Is it the Zetas, the Sinaloas, MS-13 have anything to do with any of that? What are the major groups that are battling for that?
It's right now it seems to be the Sinaloa pretty much controls all of it, but Beltran Leyva is pushing them out and punching a hole in their right dead center of their territory. Beltran Leyva, they were here before the Sinaloa, and a few years back, one of their leaders was killed by the military, and Beltran Leyva split into 2 factions. Hello?
Yeah, I hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, keep going.
So when the leader of Arturo Beltran was killed, his cartel split into 2 factions. Half of them went with the Sinaloa, and the other half blamed the Sinaloa for getting him killed so they could take over its territory. So now those guys are coming back in, and they're fighting it out. And it's just like if you're over in Afghanistan when you sit on the line here, and you can just hear them going at it.
Wow. Well, I mean, obviously, you have so much money at stake, with these operations. Something I found interesting in the show prep, you would set up kind of motion cameras to kind of see the traffic and where the traffic was. It seemed to me, and I probably was oversimplifying it watching that, it's like, wow, that makes it easy for you. You can just kind of see the paths, stake those paths out, and then kind of not take them out, but, approach them there. But are they switching up their paths every so often so they don't create a pattern?
Yeah, this basically is 3 games rolled into one. First game is hide and seek. You have to go out there and you find out where they're coming through, and when we find where they're coming through, we will put trail cameras out so that we can basically have eyes on it 24/7, and we pull the cameras every 2 weeks or so we can look at what's on it and see if we can come up with a algorithm of how they're using the trail, time of day, day of week, how often, everything like that. Once you find that, that's when we set up operations to go sit on those trails. And so basically that part of it is the game of chess. We move our pieces in front of their pieces to block their pieces. But once they figure out you're there, then it turns into a game of whack-a-mole, because then they move and then the game starts all over again.
Right. It's got to be pretty frustrating. And it's also, you guys, I mean, obviously, like Pat said in the beginning, I mean, so many deaths and, decapitated bodies. You guys are strapped up and armed to the teeth down there, and obviously that's an insurance policy because it's such a dangerous area. You guys don't have, powers to arrest, detain, etc. How do you guys go about that? I mean, when you see them, do you kind of just say stop? And I heard in the video, you're like, sometimes they do stop. How do you guys go about that? Being so heavily armed, but being so restricted in your ability to kind of enforce what you guys are doing.
Well, in the beginning, we were threatened by the federal government for kidnapping. Regardless if they're committing a crime, bringing 20 kilos of dope apiece across, or if they're a gangbanger or whatnot coming through, if you impede their forward progress from point A to point B without their permission, technically that's kidnapping.
Wow.
So what we did, we started doing some research and found that, and we took their page. It's a page out of the left. And those are the humanitarians who are leaving food and water out on these dope trails. They weren't being arrested or prosecuted for littering or anything else out in the national forests. So we decided we'll use their book. And so what we do is when we stop them, we hand them a granola bar and a bottle of water, and ta-da, we've saved their life.
Yeah,
we provided them humanitarian aid, and then we turn them over to Border Patrol.
Yeah, and I saw that. That was a very cool part of it. And I forget who the lady was. She had a map of all the red dots of just, people who've died in the crossing, be it, illegal immigrants or part of the drug trade. Found that very interesting that there is that almost underground railroadish, if you will, of people trying to help, including you guys, like I said, with water, et cetera, with people in the desert. It's a dangerous area.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we run the extremes here. My place sits at almost 4,000 feet, and then the mountains go up to 6,500. So a lot of people have this impression of the Arizona desert of being this flat, sandy place. Right. And it's brutal freaking mountains, and we run anywhere from 120 degrees in the summer to 0 degrees and in the snow in the winter.
Well, I mean, as we talk about oftentimes on the show, and we've actually been talking about a lot recently, government rat lines to facilitate the trade of not just guns, drugs, people, washing money, et cetera. Good little feedback there. Is that for you, Pat? Have you noticed, or have you had any concerns down in that area about? I'm not impugning all of Border Patrol, et cetera, but excuse me. Government, Border Patrol facilitating this trade, government, insiders assisting in this. It's been going on for a long time, government facilitating the trade of these things. Do you see any of that, any hints of that down there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, even by Border Patrol's own accounts, they figure about 25% of their guys are corrupted. And in the time I've been down here, I've turned over the names of 2 supervisors and 2 line agents to Border Patrol Intel to have them looked into.
And did they look into them?
Yeah. And only thing they can tell me is, which I know means they're serious about looking into them, is we've turned it over to the FBI, and it's beyond us now. So okay. If it goes to the FBI, then there's good indication that they're corrupt, because Border Patrol can't look into their own guys' bank accounts and phone records and stuff. So if they hand it off to the FBI, they're going to start digging.
What about you? I know you get a lot of flack, and your crew gets a lot of flack. Other than kind of political backlash, have you had any personal threats? Any of you guys in your group had any personal threats, either from government side or the Sinaloa, the cartel sides?
I've been threatened 6 times in 3 years by 2 different cartels, and we moved into a new area. We were forced out of our last place that I was at for the previous 5 years. We were forced out because we were stopping too much in that area. So we decided to purchase land in a neighboring community, and now we're basically getting threats and stuff from the liberal left who live here, who are the ones who leave out the food and water.
Interesting.
Lovely left. So that's the other side, the could be potentially even uglier side of fighting a war on more than one front, is dealing with those on the left that are, I mean, they almost want the implosion of this country, it seems like.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like before we moved here, I only had to look to the south, and be aware of what was happening that way. Now I got to look to my 6, because I got these wing nuts that are, they're tailing us, and when they tail us out in the mountains, I know they're communicating with the cartel, and so they're letting them know where we're at and everything else. And they use that poor women and children coming through line, but there's no women and children coming through here. I mean, if you saw the terrain they're trying to deal with, it's nothing but people who don't want to be caught and cartel drug mules.
Wow.
So getting back to the groups, the cartels, how, for our listeners, how are the Zetas tied into all of this, and who do they serve?
The Zetas they're pretty much over in Texas, and they're losing strength fast. From the intel that I get, the one you got to watch out for is the Jalisco Cartel. They will be the number one within probably about another year, 2 at the outside. Sinaloa is falling apart. They used to be the biggest because, Chapo Guzman is now locked up in New York, and so there's a lot of infighting. Every time you pull a leader out of one of these organizations, basically you create a power vacuum, and the spike in violence just goes through the roof. And that's pretty much what's happening on the south side right now. And once a vying cartel sees that weakness where they're fighting amongst themselves, then they'll come in the back door and start whacking them from the other side. So.
Something I found interesting, the conversation of this legalized drugs, et cetera, as we've seen over the last several years, marijuana, cannabis has been legalized, if not medicinally, recreationally, in a lot of places in the United States. And the consensus was that would have some kind of detrimental effect on the black market trade of at least marijuana, coming out of Mexico. Do you see that shift? Do you see a decrease in marijuana and an upswing of things like, heroin, obviously, which is an epidemic all throughout the country? Do you see them kind of now readjusting?
Well, we're definitely seeing, I would say, the easy couple 100% increase in meth and heroin coming across.
Yeah.
But the pot's still coming, and it doesn't matter if you do that recreational or medicinal or whatever on this side. And, I mean, basically, every once in a while, I'll slice open one of their bundles to see, and it is Mexican dirtweed. And
the brick stuff.
Yeah, they haven't gotten any better at it. But what they're doing, and a lot of people don't understand, is they're doing these huge grow ops in the national forest in Northern California and Oregon and Washington. Yeah. And so they're decimating the national forest and destroying it for these grow ops. They busted one a couple months ago in California where they had almost 250,000 plants, and they ran PVC piping 5 miles to water this plantation where they clear cut this whole valley.
Holy cow.
Yeah, no, I heard about that. Well, several ops up in the, I think it's called the Emerald Triangle, something like that, the area where pretty much the old school hippies used to run and grow all the weed. Now, and I've heard about that. People having confrontations with people walking around guarding their acres with AKs, etc.
Yep, and it's all booby-trapped. Law enforcement is even afraid to go in there, and I've tried talking with National Forest Service and said, hey, if you want, we can go in there a week in advance and do the recon on their setups and find the booby traps, find their, their schedules of when they sleep, when they're moving, when they're everything else. I said, all you got to do is guarantee that we're allowed to bring our weapons into California without fear of being prosecuted. And they go, wow, I'm sorry about that, but we can't do that. And it's like,
of course not. No. Not in California, of course.
No, and I've been asked many a time, why don't you come over here? We're getting hammered. I said, because I'd be arrested in a heartbeat and thrown in jail for the rest of my life, where they're giving driver's licenses to illegals and everything else over there.
And see, that's simple shit like that. Just that very simple thing. This lets me know the fix is in. You know what I mean? You're sitting here trying to do things to help, provide some kind of service that could actually do something. And and when you get resistance like that, you're onto something.
Well, it tells me that California government officials are in on this stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, when you give somebody a driver's license, guess what? You can go and register to vote.
Exactly.
Right.
And so you've got
benefits, etc.
California's got at least 1, if not 2 million illegals. They spent $18 billion on public services for illegals last year.
It's going to cost less than that to build the wall, isn't it? Or not much more?
Well, that's what everybody keeps, pissing and moaning that it's going to cost so much. But as a country as a whole, we spend $120 billion a year on illegal immigration.
Right.
So if we can build the wall, then within a year, you're already at a savings.
Oh, it's already paid. It's paid for itself easily a couple times over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you guys obviously have standard operating procedures, rules of engagement. Explain how important that stuff is for you guys to stay out of trouble. And have you had to get rid of people out of your group because they weren't following those?
Oh yeah, I'd say that out of it, we have at least a 50% washout cut rate. I had a guy in here, and I booted him within a day and a half because just from what he was saying. He was going, we need to go to the top of these mountains, find the scouts, and shoot them, and make a message for the next ones that come up. And I was going, whoa, we don't do that.
Pump the brakes, sir.
So we booted him. I says, there's the road. Hit it. Don't come back. Thanks. Have fun. And a year later, he got popped up off of the I-8 about 75 miles northwest of us, and he was trying to run a rip crew where they thought they were ripping off a cartel for 5 kilos of coke, and that's what he was going to use to fund his operation. Well, the cartel guy turned out to be an FBI agent.
I was just going to ask you, sir, have you had, in any kind of organizations like that who seem like they're really trying to do the right thing, there always is some kind of provocateur, some kind of infiltrator. Have you sniffed out any kind of infiltration from any kind of government agencies?
I've been given a colonoscopy by pretty much anyone that has an alphabet in their government agency. When you're doing it by the law and you stay within those bounds, there's nothing they can do. Our ROEs and SOPs, we wrote them up and I showed them to some of our friendly feds, and then they passed it along to some of their friends, and they came back to us and said, you need to do this, this, and this. That way they can't touch you for this, this, and this. So basically our ROEs and SOPs were helped develop by friendly feds.
That's great.
Well, it seems like that's when they bring in the infiltrators, when like, damn it, he's doing everything by the book. We have to create something now. You know what I mean? It's like that's what, hence the provocateur stuff. They have to create a ruse because you're doing it all by the book and they can't get you any other way.
Yeah, but they realize, I get Border Patrol intel that calls me and sets up meetings and wants to talk, and once in a blue moon they'll have FBI in there with them because FBI wants to know what I'm seeing on the south side, and or if I'm seeing Muslims coming through or whatnot. But we have a pretty decent relationship, and because I talk to, when the FBI does show up, you get a lot of these so-called patriots that go, oh my God, he's a informant and a snitch, and it's like, whatever. I'm not sitting on my couch behind my keyboard on Facebook banging away. I'm actually out doing something.
Well, something you just mentioned, obviously part of the immigration, part of the wall, et cetera, as Trump talked about, was, not just drugs coming through, but Muslims, radical Muslims. Have you seen any of that element?
Oh, we got last year, Thanksgiving weekend, 9 miles north of my house, 20 feet off the only road that comes down there was a grass fire. They went and put the grass fire out, and when they put out the grass fire, they found a body in there. He was charred and had a bullet hole in his head, and there was a wire wrapped around him, and the wire was thrown up over the power lines. And so I contacted one of my media people here in Tucson. I said, hey, this is what Border Patrol's telling me. He was a Somali, and he was the one who told me, yeah, he had a wire wrapped around him, and it was thrown over the power lines, and he had a bullet hole in his head. So I said, here's the story. Find out what the official narrative is. And so she contacted the coroner, and they just said, oh, it was just a poor immigrant trying to charge his cell phone.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah. No. Is his body his cell phone? Like, what the hell?
Yeah. I don't give a shit what country you come through. You don't take a rock, tie it around a string, and plug in your phone and throw it over power lines. But
wow,
that there basically was a message, and when they bring it in that far into the country, it's a message to both sides. Down in Mexico and up in Tucson and places like that.
Well, another time when the border, obviously, and you can jump in here, Pat. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Another time when the border was obviously a heavy topic during the Obama administration, and the thing called Fast and Furious, which the weapons shipping, not just to, in my opinion, from my research, not just to the cartels, but the border was the conduit for the rest of the world as they weaponized a lot of these Islamic militants, and this is what we talk about on the show a lot. Have you seen that? I mean, even back then, did you see elements of Fast and Furious?
I called it, and the interesting thing is it's really easy down here to be effective because a lot, I'd say about 75% happens during shift change of Border Patrol. So one day I'm sitting at my house over there in Sassabee, and I see this vehicle going up a driveway, and it's like, well, wait a second, that person doesn't live there, and it was a white van. And so I climb up on my roof, and I bust up my binos, and I'm looking over, and this van opens up its doors, and 4 guys come piling out of the wash, and they're feeding them these long rectangular boxes, and they're running back to the fence and stuffing them through the fence. And basically I called Border Patrol, and I said, hey, you got anybody down here? And they go, why? I says, because there's a van load of guns going through the fence right now.
Wow.
And the sad part is it was 150 yards away from a port of entry, which is staffed by custom agents. But custom agents don't have authority beyond their concrete pad, so they could just stand there and watch them.
Don't they have the 100 miles on either side? Isn't that kind of their jurisdiction?
Yeah, that's Border Patrol.
Okay.
But customs is only at where you make a crossing into Mexico. Nowhere else. Wow. So, we just sat there and watched them, easy 100 rifles go through the fence in a matter of freaking 5 minutes. And Border Patrol's going, well, what color's the van? I was going, do you have anybody here? And they're going, no. I said, then what does it matter what color the van is? What are you going to do? You're going to stop an empty van going north? It's already done.
Right.
And yeah, you're right about that, because in the beginnings, like in Fast and Furious, the cartels needed that opium for their heroin production. And the jihadis needed weapons and they needed cash. So those two have been in bed together for, 10 years. Easy, 10 years.
Wow. See, now that would be very interesting to see that more in depth, the marriage of those two forces. Very fascinating.
Well, I've got a scout lookout mountain right on the line, and I went up there a few years ago, and I rounded this bend, and there's this rock face, and they had tagged it. And, I don't know why you're carrying a can of spray paint out in the middle of nowhere, but I guess that was the reason. And they tagged it Sinaloa to let everybody know that it's their territory. And then underneath it, there was Arabic tagging. And I took pictures of it, and I sent it off to some linguistic friends of ours. And they're going, we can't make it out, but it is Arabic symbols. So there is we'd have to see it in person to see if we can do it, read it. And then once in a while when we monitor some of the cartel radio traffic in the clear, we record it. And then we play it back and we listen to it and we ask, what the heck is that word? And then again, what we do, if we don't understand the word, we'll send that recording off to our linguistic friends, and they're going, oh, that's Arabic. It's a color. And so the color is basically they were color coding their trails, but in case anybody was listening in and they got Spanish, then they go, well, what the hell was that? So they're learning bits of Arabic. And the town that is directly south of Sassabee is called El Sassabee. And I used to live in Sassabee until about 4 months ago when we were forced out, like I said. And when I was there was 7 people. Now it's down to 6. But the town on the south side has 2,500 people, and I, have people from the south side who appreciate what we do, and they informed me a year ago that there's approximately 80 Muslim males about 2 miles south of the town in this camp. And the words out of their mouth was, these people scare the shit out of us. Now, if these people scare the shit out of them, and day in and day out, they deal with cartel, they deal with bandits, they deal with corrupt military, corrupt federales, and they know how to do that, and they say these people scare the shit out of them, then they should scare the shit out of everybody.
That's saying
right.
something.
And they've been there for about a year.
And at the same time, we've seen, I mean, you would know better, but citizens on the border down there in Mexico, I mean, in some instances, some cities, some towns have formed almost vigilante groups and are fighting back, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, we were in that documentary Cartel Land, and basically what it was the leader of two different groups fighting against the same enemy. And the problem is down there they become corrupted because they see the money that's involved, and then they basically have the power because they end up, they get weapons, and they end up turning into cartel themselves.
Yeah, you get, I mean, not only government officials, military officials, law enforcement officials, just the money, just corrupts them, and they end up turning. It's an epidemic that's, I don't know how you control it. I don't know how you figure out how to control it.
Well,
it's like a whack-a-mole thing. You knock one down and another one comes up, consistently.
And that's my thing is, like, I did a radio show yesterday, and the lady asked me, so what do you think we should do? And I said, well, we seem to be able to go to any country around the world and technically, as they call it, bomb them into democracy, which just creates chaos and everything else. And they call that in our national security interest. But when you've got thousands of tons of meth and heroin coming over every year, and these people are decimating their own people, there's over at least 500,000 people in the past 10 years have been wiped out by these people over there. Now, to me, that would make more sense to me that that's in our national security interest, which is right on our doorstep, than some jihadi halfway around the damn planet.
Well, and again, one of the telltale signs that the fix is in. You know what I mean? Like, that's...
Well, there's too much money involved.
Yeah,
I mean, the human smuggling aspect of it is $9 to $10 billion a year.
Jeez,
the drug smuggling is $40 to $50 billion a year.
What
So
about
you're
weapons?
looking at
You got an estimate on weapons?
Yeah, you're not counting everything. That's just their northward bound stuff. That's 40 to $50 billion a year total coming across. And I tell people, the only difference between the Mexican government and the United States government is Mexican government doesn't care they're corrupt. Ours pretends they're not.
True.
Right.
So
that's
true.
the truth. So basically, I mean, as in the Philippines and other nations where they've, to combat this, they've gone to the extremes of, in the Philippines, the president said, hey, if you know a drug dealer, see a drug dealer, you can shoot him. You can kill him. And I think they've had like 7,000 people murdered in the past year or two. Guys standing on the corner slinging rocks, getting gunned down everywhere in the Philippines, gun battles going on. And it's either we go to control this, it's either we go that way or we just legalize everything, and then we've got problems also.
Well, you see, they really don't want to stop it because, look at it. I mean,
yeah, government officials.
We have the war on drugs, and it's been going on for 40 plus years.
Right.
Well, now we have the war on terror. Whenever the government puts the war on in front of some phrase, that just means there's no goal, there's no objective, there's no game plan. All it is let's see how much money and for how long we can keep throwing it at it to make our friends richer.
Like Smedley Butler said, war is a racket. I know he was talking about war, but, like you said, the war on drugs is a racket. The, war on terror is a racket.
Yep. All these private prisons in the United States and even the state prisons are making money off of dope-related crimes. If you want to stop, I would say 75% of what is crossing this border in a matter of about 2 weeks, you go out and you arrest every single one of these humanitarians who's leaving food and water out, because before they did that, there is no way people could make that crossing. It's 5-day hump through brutal desert, and there's no way you can carry 5 days worth of water and food. You can carry 5 days worth of food, but not water.
Wow.
Yeah.
A lot of moving parts, man. A lot of moving parts, and again, like I can't thank you enough for the work you're doing, bro. Because this is, I mean, it really is an epidemic, and you know, I don't know you, but I'm assuming your heart is pure and your intentions are pure. Where you see the border security, you see DEA, not all of them, but you see this being facilitated by some of our government agencies, profited by, you know, money's washed and laundered through a lot of our financial institutions. You see Wells Fargo, Wachovia, a lot of these places getting huge fines for engaging in money laundering of drug money.
Oh, yeah, but nothing ever happens to them.
Yeah, exactly. The frustrating part.
It ties into conversations that Jeffrey and I have had with a gentleman from up in the Boston region, a former BRIC investigative unit gentleman who talks about how the Sinaloa cartel is moving dope up the west coast into Canada, across Canada to the east coast, the eastern seaboard, and bringing it down through the northeast corridor into the Boston area. And we see that area of the country with a massive epidemic of heroin overdoses and Oxycontins and everything else. This stuff is causing huge problems all over the country. And you can see, they say that the rock machine, which was in control of the Montreal, the Quebec region up there in Canada, that got taken over by the Hells Angels, pretty much decimated that group. And they're moving the heroin and stuff into the United States through that part of the country. And then you've got tied to that some Syrians and other Middle Eastern guys that are running the drug organizations up in the Northeast area, and they're committing mass, all kinds of brutal murders and carving people up and doing all kinds of stuff, man. And there's info, there's intel on how that operation was being tied to help fund ISIS and other al-Nusra and other groups.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like one of the other lies the government tells you is, there is no cross-border violence. Well, there is, but they reclassify it as something else, and they classify it as gang violence, because every one of these street gangs, the MS-13s, Norteños, Sureños, Bloods, Crips, 18th Street Gang, Mexican Mafia, then it goes on and on and on. Every one of those is foot soldiers for a cartel to peddle their product on the street corners, so they're fighting it out for their lucrative street corners, just like they're doing it on the south side for the right to use the lucrative trails.
Right.
And so it's all spin, so that people, and most people have the attention span of a frickin' gnat. But, if they don't classify it as cross-border violence, then there's no reason to get all excited.
Because nobody really gives a shit about gangs killing each other.
Yeah, but, it's decimating the neighborhoods and cities.
Absolutely.
It's insanity,
So how many, have any of the folks that have worked with you or under you been injured, been shot, any of that?
No, 90% of my volunteers are former military and law enforcement, and the vast majority of them have combat tours under their belt now. And when you set it up right and you do it right, there's, even if they are carrying a weapon, when they see how it's all laid out and they look around, they see two guys on one side of a trail above them and they see two guys on the other side above them with ARs, and they tell them to stop, drop your weapon. Oh, they're going to comply in a heartbeat, because what are they going to do, hide behind a cactus?
Right.
While they try to reload? I stopped a guy once. He had an AK-47. We got him to drop it, and when that happens, what we'll do is one of our guys, he's tasked with, he'll leave his weapons behind, and then we cover him. He'll drop in, remove that weapon out and then do a cursory search to see if there's any more. I dropped back in, and this guy had a tube sock tied around his belt loop. And so I hit his tube sock, and I go, "Oh, you got to be shitting me!" And so I said, "Get the phone, turn the camera on." And his tube sock had 30 loose rounds of 7.62 in it. So basically, he had one magazine, and then he had a tube sock for his reload.
Okay.
So it's like, that makes, I mean, ain't no way in hell I would try to fucking battle it out with somebody, and I had to stop and untie my tube sock.
Yeah, reload through a tube sock. Not as easy as a banana clip.
Yeah. So most of them, when you tell them, and that's what a lot of people don't understand. They're going, "Well, aren't you afraid?" I says, "No, because we train. We know what our weapons are capable of doing, and they're sighted in for us and everything else. And the majority of the time, all that happens is when if they are going to run across armed, they just hand a weapon. I've seen revolvers and little 25 caliber automatics, and I'm just like, they're handed a gun and go, "Okay, you're in charge of protecting it." So the guy's never shot the thing, never went to the range with it, and so basically, even if he did shoot, it'd be a Hail Mary.
Wow. So you're not seeing a lot of highly trained people, of course, and certainly no dual facing banana mags that are duct taped together for quick change.
No, not. The closer you are to the border, the less weapons you're going to see, because you got to look at it as a business. They're pushing a product, and they know X amount of product is going to get stopped, but X amount's going to get through.
Right.
So they had firefights on the border in the U.S., and you started having U.S. casualties. Then there is no more, "Don't worry about it, it's safe and secure." Nope, all hell would break loose, and they would have to flood the area with everybody they could think of, Border Patrol, friggin'
National Guard.
Yep, and so that would shut down their drug trade altogether. So they're not dumb. I mean, it's a business, so they allow it to happen. And but the farther north you go, I'd say about 20 miles north of the border is where you start running into rip crews, and those are the guys that basically, rip crew is the one that killed Brian Terry with the Fast and Furious weapons.
Right.
And so basically, it's either a rival cartel that comes in and does an end around and sneaks in, or it's gangs from a rival cartel coming out of the cities up north, and they wait till they're in the dead center of nowhere land, and then they rob them, shoot them, and everything else. I mean, when Brian Terry happened, a lot of people don't know this, and I'm pretty sure the majority of people don't know this, but the FBI had a informant inside that rip crew, and he was told, "Lead this rip crew into this area because Border Patrol will be waiting for him." So what did this guy do? He went back to the rip crew and said, "Hey, guess what? Border Patrol's going to be waiting for us here." But Border Patrol didn't know the FBI had an informant in it because, hey, we're secret squirrel, more secret squirrel than you, so we can't tell you, and you don't need to know.
He was basically being a double agent.
Yeah, exactly. And then the only reason Brian Terry died is because of the political correctness in the country. They took the shitbag who was shot out first in the first helicopter out, and Brian Terry bled to death on the ground.
Jesus.
Instead of taking out ours first and letting the shitbag bleed out to death, they allowed an Asian to do it.
Yeah, that's something that nobody is talking about, that's for sure.
Well, and that goes back to, again, like I said, there's so many rogues on both sides. This goes back to, like, at the mid-'80s, and Kiki Camarena, the DEA agent that was pretty much, I mean, I don't want to piss anybody off, but he was pretty much sold out by some of his fellow compadres because he was an undercover guy, and they pretty much let his cover get burned, and he wound up getting tortured, etc. Real ugly story.
Oh, yeah. Well, like I say, it's that old saying, money talks and bullshit walks. So, it's just like 25% of the Border Patrol. You walk up to somebody and go, "Hey, dude, I got 10 G's if you turn your back."
Yeah, when they're making 50, 60 grand a year, they're going to do it. Or or there's a good chance that they will.
Right.
They're making a little more than $50,000 a year.
Yeah. Now, has this administration had any impact on improving the situation down there?
Well, I noticed the morale's up. I mean, big time. About 2 miles from where I am right now, to the east of me, there's one of those humanitarian groups, and I use that loosely, that had a camp out there. They're called No More Deaths. And Border Patrol went in and raided them and pulled out 4 guys out of there who had been hiding out in this camp. And, 2 of them had criminal records. They'd already been deported. Yet here they are, these humanitarians. Oh, my God, you violated the trust we had of providing you. No, you're freaking hiding criminals. And so Border Patrol has stepped it up. And from what I understand, further east of me, they're now starting to ticket the humanitarians for leaving food and water out, because basically when you carry something into the national forest and you set it down and you walk away and don't take it with you, that's littering.
Yeah, littering.
And so they're all given $1,000 tickets and being charged, and so they're going to just hurt them in the pocketbook.
That's the best way to do it. That's if you can't figure out another way, that's the only way many times. Now, I've heard that the administration has hired or allowed the hiring of a lot more agents. Is that true?
Yeah, well, they want to hire another 5,000, and you got to look at it. I mean, every politician said that. They think that's the key answer to everything. We need to hire more. Well, they got 20,000 Border Patrol agents. How many people? And we only have about 4,000 miles of border. That's 5 guys per mile.
Right.
And, Tucson Station is tasked with covering 25 miles of border, and they have 300 agents.
Wow.
But the way they go about doing it, it's never going to work, because they have to drive an hour and a half to 2 hours to get down to the frickin' border from where they start their shift. So basically, you drive in, you drive around, you wave a little bit, and turn around and drive away. So, if this is a war going on 24/7, in any conflict, the way you gauge that you're winning is by occupying territory.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing.
In other words, we need a lot of forward operating bases.
Yeah, and we're occupying territory. We're doing it like you're supposed to. Whereas the government's coming in and doing a once around, a peekaboo, and then driving away. That's not occupying it. That's just visiting.
Yeah. Now, let's go to kidnapping. I know that in my talks with some of the Maricopa County Sheriff's deputies and some of those folks down there had, for me, it was at the time an honor to meet Sheriff Joe. I went up and talked to him, sat in his office, and guy's quite a character. But these guys talked about, the massive issue with kidnapping down there. On
the south side?
Well, more, I think, in the Phoenix area and suburbs and stuff. It's out of control.
Yeah.
They're snatching them up and holding them ransom, making families pay for them, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. Basically, what happens is they paid to come through, and they're with their coyotes, and they go to do drop houses. But once they get to the drop house, they're supposed to, they under the impression that, okay, this is my destination. Now I can try to get on a bus or something and go somewhere. Once they get there, they go, nah, we want some more money. And so that's when they start doing the phone calls into Mexico. The interesting thing is, when I go up into Tucson or over into Nogales, I'm approached by Hispanics all the time thanking me for what I do. And I said, yeah, no problem. But they explained to me that they can't go see their relatives in Mexico anymore, because if they go down there and they realize, they say they have Arizona plates or something like that, they realize they live in the States, they equate that to having money. So they'll kidnap them and then make phone calls to see if they can get money out of their relatives in the United States. And if they don't, they'll end up dying. So they say, we can't go see our grandmother or anybody else down there anymore. So it happens on both sides to both peoples, U.S. citizens and Mexican citizens coming this way.
How crazy.
No, when I was down there, I don't know, Jeff, I think you've heard this story, but I was down in the Baja California area, Ensenada, Rosarita, those areas along there, and I was there on a movie. It's the only movie I've ever been involved in my life, but we went into town. I can't remember which town it was we went into, and we ate lunch, and then we were leaving, and with me was Rob Lawler, who has been one of the best UFC welterweights in history, world champion, Tim Sylvia, heavyweight UFC champion, myself, and then a guy by the name of Sam Sheridan, who is an author and a guy that is a martial artist and all that. And we're getting in the vehicle, and Sam's the only one that speaks Spanish, and a Mexican police officer comes up and starts barking at us, and I'm not sure what he's saying, and Sam's talking to him, and then an old man walks up and starts harassing the cop for harassing us. Well, the cop just smacks him in the head with a billy club and drops him. The guy's got a walker already. And so the cop basically says, we get back in the vehicle, and Sam says he told us we have to follow him back to the police station. Now, this is a few days after we got a story from Paul Walker, the actor who's now deceased. One of his friends got arrested down there, and they kept him in jail, and basically the family had to keep sending money to get him out of jail. And they finally got him out. I mean, he spent like 30 days down there. And it wasn't, I don't believe he had done anything. And so, I'm sitting there saying to myself, okay, we got a serious issue here. And I said, if they try to get us to go into the police department, we have to knock them all out, and we're going to make a run for the border. We're about 40 miles away from the border. And so when we got there, they got us out of the vehicle and started trying to rifle through Tim Sylvia, who's 6'8", 300 pounds. They're trying to rifle through his pockets, and he's swatting these cops' arms away. And things are starting to get, I mean, it's getting ready to go off. And all of a sudden, one of the cops luckily recognized me from TV. And then I said, yeah, you dumbass, and that's Tim Sylvia, and that's Ruthless Robbie Lawler, and you guys are about to fucking die because this is getting ugly. And finally the guy looks at me and goes, oh shit, oh, amigo, you go, And it dawned on him and Tim was getting ready to start swatting these guys like flies. And so after experiencing that, man, I don't have a whole lot of fondness for the Mexican system, I can tell you.
Yeah, I mean, it's everywhere. The cops, the military, it's a very corrupt country.
Yeah, and Tim, I mean, I've been around. I've lived a pretty rough life at times when I was a little bit younger, and had people, try and stab me. I've had people try and shoot me. By no means the baddest dude on the planet, but I can take care of myself pretty well. I can fight. And the only reason I'm bringing that up is because after I trained Maricopa County one time, some of the jailers were there, and from Maricopa County Jail, and they said, we're going to do a drug raid. We got a problem with drugs in the prison, so we're gonna throw some flashbangs in, and we want you to go in with us. And I said, yeah, sure, I'm going with you. And so they raided this. Flashbangs go off, and they get all these guys out of their cells and sit them facing the wall, rows of like 20 of them, probably 20 rows deep, and they're all sitting in their pink boxer shorts and stuff. And the vast majority of them were all Mexican citizens, and most of them were either coyotes running drugs across the border, whatever. And a lot of them had tattoos on their neck of the patron saint of the cartels, right? And some of these guys were turning around and looking at me. I'm pretty confident in my skills, and I was thinking, man, this is a scary group of dudes if they all go off at once, man. These people should not be coming into this country.
Makes for a dangerous situation.
Yeah, I'm too old.
The American
to fight.
citizens just don't realize how bad it is, right?
Yeah, I'm too old to fight. That's why I carry a gun everywhere.
Well, the speed those rounds travel at are a little faster than my fist. So
yeah.
Fuck Taekwondo, I told the faux, like the Notorious B.I.G. says it. But
right.
What else you got for our boy here?
Well,
Let's see.
Well, I was going to ask you how people can volunteer. I mean, we'll talk about the monetary assistance that you guys need. But first off, what qualifications do people have to come down and join you, stay there? They got to pay their own way, obviously.
Yep.
But what kind of qualifications are you looking for? Law enforcement experience, military experience, things like that?
Well, that's preferred, but some of my best guys have no experience in law enforcement or military, and basically they're the easiest to mold into what I want.
Right.
Because they're like sponges; they suck it up. And when you get the former law enforcement and military, we've already been trained. I said, well, that's great, but now forget all about it. We have to do it this way, and sometimes it gets a little hard to explain that to them. But there are no qualifications. The only qualification is you got to be 21, and beyond that, just wanting to do your part. We have a volunteer page where basically, if you want to help, you have to fill out an application just like you would at a job, driver's license, everything. And once we get that, I usually make the phone call to talk to somebody so I can hear why they want to do this and to see if it throws up any red flags for me. And if they pass that, then we make them do a background check.
Yeah, I was going to say you probably do a criminal background check on people, right?
Yeah. And so that background check is awesome because they run that name once a month. And I've had guys out here before, they good to go. And then after they leave from a 1 week up, before the next one, I says, hey, you need to clear up that legal matter you got happening before you come back out here again. They're going, well, how'd you know? I says, your background check. I said, they run it every month.
That's great.
So once you pass the background check, then we make you notarize our ROEs and SOPs. Basically, we do that because that says you'll do it exactly the way we do it. And if you do anything else, you do anything stupid, that is binding in a court of law. And if you do something stupid, we'll be the first people to zip tie your ass up and turn you over to somebody.
Right.
ROEs being rules of engagement, SOP being your standard operating procedures, just for the lay person.
Right. And then regardless if you pass all of that, because you can do that no problem and still have an ulterior motive. So what happens is I'll put a new guy in with my seasoned guys on a team with them, and they will sit there, with them out in the mountains for once we set up an operation, we have a forward operating base we set up. That's where all the vehicles go. That's where all the tents and anything else goes, our comms and everything. And the reason we do that is that draws the attention of the scouts on the mountaintops to that area. So they try to keep an eye on us there. But we wait for the opportune time to put together 4-man teams and then hump anywhere from a mile to 5 miles by foot to sit on a trail for up to 72 hours. And so even though you passed all this stuff, my guys will listen to what you're talking about, and they'll watch your body language when you're out there. And, I've had quite a few times where I'll get a radio call going, you need to come on out. I said, all right, I'll be there in a bit. And I go out there, what's up? He's going, dude is jumping in the middle of the night. He hears a twig snap. He's swinging a weapon all over the place. And he's going, so what's up with that? He goes, well, there's something out there. I said, of course, there's all kinds of shit out there. There's bunny rabbits, there's deer, there's cow, there's mountain lions, bobcats, there's border patrol agents, but you can't just swing a weapon because you heard a noise, And probably the hardest thing to teach people, regardless if they've been in the military or law enforcement or whatnot, is how to sit still for up to 3 days. Because it's that movement that gives you away. That's why we do the go in for anywhere 24 to 72 hours. And that way, once the movement stops and they don't see anything, they think it's wide open, and that's when they usually run into us.
Almost like sniper training.
Yeah, basically it's LRP, long-range reconnaissance. You
Right.
get in and just sit and watch and wait.
How did you learn those tricks while you were in the military?
No, I was a combat engineer, paratrooper. I learned how to blow shit up, and there wasn't much of a calling for that out in civilian life. So I could have went to work for the mafia or a mining company, and neither one of them appealed to me. So basically, I learned all of this just by humping the mountains for the past 7 years.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, if I was a single guy, I'd probably be down there with you guys, to be honest with you. But I've got three young daughters.
We got tons of married guys.
Do you?
Oh yeah.
How long do they stay married after that?
Actually, it seems to make the marriage last longer. I'm going away for all right, goodbye.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Last longer. Yeah.
My wife doesn't mind when I go away because I come back with money. But if I went away and didn't come back with any money, there might not be anything to come back to.
Yeah, but you come back with stories.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and see, that's one of the things why the former military combat vets love doing this is because when they come back, the government pretty much just kicks them to the curb and they've lost their purpose in life.
Right.
And this gives them that another purpose in life, and also it's the camaraderie and the brotherhood,
Yeah, that's exactly what they're missing, right?
Yeah. And so, I even have guys that have been diagnosed with PTSD, but when they come out here, it all seems to disappear because it's back in their environment. It's that organized chaos of a city that really gets to them. And
right.
so, I mean, it's great. I mean, I've developed some awesome friendships with some outstanding people, and there's people in my organization that I'd throw my life on the line for them at any given moment just because, of who they are. And I wouldn't do a lot of that in the big city.
Right. Yeah. So let's get to how they can help you monetarily. If they go to Arizona Border Patrol Recon, Arizona Border Recon.org, they can find the page there to donate, correct?
Yes, sir. We got a PayPal there, and we also have put up a GoFundMe because when we did the relocation a couple months ago, being down on the border, there's not many places for rent, and we were renting the last place for the past 5 years. And so when we got booted from there, to keep it going, we came out of pocket with, a sizable, we paid a lot of money for a piece of land where nobody could tell us that we couldn't do what we're doing.
Right. So how many acres did you guys end up getting?
We picked up 10 acres.
Okay.
So we did a GoFundMe because now with the property, we're probably into it for real close to $200,000 out of our own pocket.
For 10 acres of rock?
No, for 7 years of doing this.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
I've spent about $20,000 just on communications gear.
Okay.
And I have about $5,000 in laptops that go out into the field, and it just goes on and on and on. Trail cameras and satellite phones and cellular boosters and mobile antennas, and and my woman, when we go out on the ops, she loves to cook, so there's at least 2 or 3 meals that I pay for everybody.
Right. Yeah. So there are definitely costs with this. I mean, you got to have gas money. You got to be able to pay the mortgage on the property. Keeping up all the equipment and everything you guys are using, and certainly costs involved. So people can go to ArizonaBorderRecon.org, click on the donate page, and throw some money out there for these guys. A lot of great Americans doing a great service assisting the Border Patrol down there. And Tim, thank you very much. We won't keep you any longer, but been a very interesting and amazing talk with you today. Jeffrey and I really appreciate your time, and we'd love to have you back on as things progress for you guys, and hopefully you guys can keep getting an influx of money and keep doing what you're doing, because this stuff's really important.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and we're basically the only legitimate organization down on the border keeping an eye on it. And there's an open invite to both of you anytime you want to come down and see it firsthand.
I tell you what, we're working on going to television. We can't announce where that's going to be, but we're going to be doing some episodes of the Conspiracy Farm that are filmed. Our podcast is going to be converted over to a television series, so we're excited, and we definitely want to come down there and have one of our episodes filmed with you, sir.
Yeah, we right now we're making a second documentary about what's going on. We were approached by a documentary filmmaker, and he says, I saw Cartel Land. He said it was awesome, but they left you hanging. Everybody wants to know what you guys are doing more, and
yeah.
So they're just focusing on this side of the border.
And people can go watch Cartel Land on Netflix, Hulu.
Yep. It's on Netflix, I know for sure.
Okay, yeah, people should definitely go check that out, because that's an amazing documentary. And Mr. Foley, we appreciate your time today, buddy. It's been awesome. Stay safe down there, okay?
Thank you, gentlemen, very much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, that is all for this episode of the Conspiracy Farm. Thank you for listening in, and Jeffrey, get some rest, brother.
Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. There will be more.